Richard Plate, and he's going to talk about how he utilizes service learning in his classroom. So thank you for joining us.
Hi, yeah, sure, my pleasure. And feel free to interrupt me as well our if our guest speaker comes in. So yeah, Haley asked me to just talk a little bit about my experience with the service learning that projects that I run out of two different courses that I teach. And I thought maybe by kind of comparing them, it might give you a sense of the different ways, or at least a couple different ways, very different ways, I think, that service learning can be used in a classroom. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about um, each of the courses, and then kind of show you how I use service learning a little bit differently in each of those courses. Um, so the one on the left here, Foundation of Environmental Studies, it's an intro level course, a 3000 level, but it's kind of like it's intended to be the first course that an environmental studies major or minor takes before taking all the rest of their upper level courses. So it's supposed to do kind of a survey of the different issues and key concepts with environmental studies. So with that, the service learning in that class, and that's actually where I started doing service learning. I kind of added in with the capstone that I developed later. My goal with that is to give, with that course in general, is to give students exposure to what it means to work in the context of environmental issues and sustainability. So getting them out into the world working on something is key to that in my mind. It occurred to me in chatting with Haley about this presentation that my goal with the students, or the starting point of my students, might be a little bit different. Often I get students coming in to that environmental studies course just full of passion about the issues that they want to address, but maybe with not as much like skills and knowledge that that they would need to kind of address those effectively. So giving students a sense of getting out there and interacting with people who actually are addressing these sustainability oriented challenges is key. And I forget that I need to look up this actual study, but in a study that was done years ago, they were interviewing folks that worked on, it wasn't environmental, it was more like social issues that are just sort of like, wicked problems, the kinds of things that you work on the issue your whole life and it's still a problem, at the end. Global hunger, some of these like really hard problems that kind of stay with us and you just try to manage them and make things better. And they asked those folks, like, what do you find satisfying? Like, why do you do this work? What do you find satisfying enough to do this as a career? And the number one answer, almost to a person, was community. The people I like, interacting with the people that I interact with in this job. So I'm trying to give students a little taste of that as well, to go out and chat with some other folks who are doing this kind of work. So those are my goals for the service learning project in that foundations course. So the structure of those projects then, with those goals in mind, is students go out and identify an organization that they want to work for this project. I give them a list of organizations that are just suggestions, just to get them, if they have no idea where to go. Here's kind of a starting point, a little description of each of those organizations, but they're by no means constrained to that list. That list is really pretty much local too. So especially my students who are doing this online from far away, pretty much have to go to a different organization. So the first assignment associated with the project is a proposal that those students, it's basically a worksheet that they fill out that describes what their plan is for this project. What's the organization? What's the contact information? What's the expected work? And what's the connection to sustainability? And I use that assignment. It's a low point assignment. And it's one that they can turn in. They can keep returning it in as many times as they need to get full credit on it, basically. Because what I do with that is, if for whatever reason I don't think it's going to work out, if I have concerns, either about the connection of the organization to sustainability or just about the efficacy of the project, then I kick it back to the students with a 0 on it and with my comments about my concerns. And then we can kind of, the garbage is being picked up right outside my window, so I apologize for the outside noise here. But we can keep kicking that back and forth until we find something that the student, that interests the student and that I think kind of meets the needs of the class. And what that does is it resolves the problem of finding out after the students have done the whole project that the organization actually didn't fit, and I have to tell them, well, all those hours that you spent for that organization actually aren't going to apply to the project because I don't think that fits sustainability. It has that conversation at the beginning before they've invested time in whatever they're doing. Just as an example, I get a fair amount of like pet adoption projects. I think pet adoption is great, and those are great organizations. It just doesn't quite fit what I'm trying to get at with teaching students about sustainability specifically in the class. So I can kind of address that earlier, right before they've invested time. And then once the students get a 10 out of 10 on that assignment, that's their thumbs up to go forward and start getting their hours. They log their hours, and then they need to turn into me a log of their hours with verification from their supervisor at the organization. That comes at the end, so I'm getting a little ahead. The update, moving down that left side, the update assignment is really just another worksheet to put service learning back on their radar. So about halfway through the semester, I have, well, a little before halfway, I have them turn that in. And it just tells me, how many hours have you already done? What did you do? And then what are your plans for the remaining hours of the minimum 15 that you need to do? And I really just, it's fine if they've got, I've done 0 and here's my schedule for the 15, as long as I know that they've got a schedule, because I don't want them to get caught, procrastinating until the very last minute, and it's very hard to get those hours at the last minute. The abstract assignment, I pretty much copy paste the service learning showcase in application instructions. So I don't force students to apply for the service learning showcase, but essentially I say, once you've done the abstract assignment and you're already doing the project, you've done everything you need to do to apply to the showcase. So it's kind of silly not to at that point. But so I kind of just set them up to do it and then hope that they kind of follow through on that. And then the sort of biggest point assignment is that field notes and reflection. So I have them take field notes each time they go out and do a work session. And I've got fairly broad questions. What did you find interesting about it? What surprised you? What did you do? Those kinds of things. And basically the idea is that I tell them if they get their thoughts down as early as possible after each work session, then their final reflection is going to just write itself because they've already kept this sort of field journal or diary that they can pull from as they're trying to, in their final reflection, kind of give a little bit more big picture of kind of the impact that this experience had on them, how it connects to the other course content that they've been working with and that kind of stuff. So shifting over to the capstone, and I can't see the chat. I can try to field some of these. I'm seeing the chat questions pop up, but then they go away. Let me see real quick.
Richard, do you want me to read you the questions? Would that be easier?
Okay, no, I'm reading that. So would you mind sharing your contracts, assignment descriptions with those who are interested? Yeah, absolutely. I can, I'm happy to send over the worksheets that I've kind of made up and all of that. Again, they're pretty kind of open-ended. They could probably apply to just about anything. So how many students are in my class? The foundations class caps at 50 and usually gets pretty close to that cap. The capstone class that I'm about to talk about caps at 35. And a quick note on grading though, for the foundations course, it's not that bad in terms of like extra time grading or anything like that. That the proposal assignment, I always get, a handful of students, say 10% or so, that I do have to like kick it back and forth a few times before we get to something that they want to do and that I think fits kind of what, that the goals for the assignment. The rest of them, often they're kind of right on point from the beginning. I do lay out a lot of like, I have for the online, a recorded lecture. For the face-to-face, I do spend a fair amount of class time early on explaining why we're doing service learning, what I hope they get out of it, what I want them to get out of it, and kind of the constraints of, I want it to be connected to sustainability. So I kind of front load that information to try to streamline that. And then the field notes and reflection is that like biggest, in terms of number of words assignment. And those are honestly like some of the funnest assignments to grade. That I enjoy those far more, frankly, than there's a research paper in that course too. And the research paper can be a little bit of a slog after you get to like number 40 or whatever on them. And the reflections, because they're so different and they're kind of, because the students have room to kind of explore their own paths, those are often kind of fun to grade. So the capstone experience class, that is a class that the students take their last semester before graduating. So there, the idea isn't to like introduce them to what it's like to work on sustainability so much as try to get them those, I guess they're often called soft skills, although they're frankly not that soft most of it, but what it's like to really work on something. So with that class, I put students in groups of 3 to 5. So I give them a range of projects that they can work on. And these are projects that I've set up with community partners before the class has begun. And then I have students apply for those projects. And I have them kind of, list describe their skills, their experience, why they think that they would be good for that project. No, I mean, they have to do one of them. So, they have to at least be in one project. But I actually do use those. For the most part, I try to get them in their first choice. I have them list 2 to 3 choices, depending on the size of the class and how many projects we have going. But in some cases, the projects do require some specific GIS skills or something like that it just wouldn't work well if the students didn't have that. For the most part, I try to get them into what their first choice is. So I put them in groups of 3 to 5 students per group, and then they meet with the community partner. And because of actually since COVID and using Zoom more, now I can be at all of those meetings where that used to not be physically possible because they'd be meeting with them across town or something like that. So that's actually something that I'm going to carry forward even after we go to more, back to it's a mixed mode class is how it used to run, and it will run like that again. But so the idea here is that they're working on a real project. These are things that the clients, I run the class essentially like an environmental consulting firm. So we refer to our community partners as clients. We have this initial meeting where we go over the project. The students then, I've got a few smaller point assignments where like students summarize what happened at the meeting, for example, just to make sure they're picking up what the client was putting down, that kind of thing. The students produce a written proposal for the client. This is kind of a mishmash between, like, it's got a literature review, like an academic type of proposal, but then it's got more like deliverables, and it's a little bit more like a regular kind of professional, what they might see in a consulting company or something like that, as other parts of it as well. Because I want to know that they've done the background research, basically, and then the client, the community partner, wants to know, what's the plan? What are they going to be able to deliver? When are they going to do that by? That kind of thing. So I kick that proposal over to the client. They give me feedback on like, yes, this looks just like what we needed, or actually we were thinking, X, not Y. Once the client signs off on that, that's the contract. So we get to that point about a third of the way through the semester. And then the students are are working on that project, and their final report for that project answers to the deliverables that they laid out in that proposal. So in terms of skills, so again, these are a little bit more specific to like in the workplace skills. So one, sustainability is a marathon. That's maybe, there's probably correlates to that in other contexts, but my students want to go out and save the world. And if they don't do that in like the first 6 months they graduate, then they failed completely and they're questioning their whole kind of reason for existence. So I want them to get a sense of, you have, big goals, but then you like develop kind of bite-sized tasks for yourself, smaller goals that you can actually achieve. I love the initial meeting. So we work with Keith Kruger, is the head of recycling, indoor recycling at UCF. And we work with him, and students will come into a meeting with him and they'll be like, they'll have plans for how they're going to revamp how recycling is done at UCF. And then Keith comes back with, I have a budget to buy 5 more recycling containers this semester. So we need to, scale down kind of what our plans are for this. And while I do hope we invest more as a university in recycling, I think it's important for students to see the kind of the barriers, the real world barriers, and be able to work within those, or at least in the context of those. Professionalism and networking. I've had a couple of students actually get jobs from the partners. I've had a bunch of them get letters of recommendation, things like that. It's getting to know people. The problem solving and handling curveballs. The number one skill I think that students are lacking that come into that class is they'll, when a barrier happens and something doesn't go according to plan, they'll just sit on it. They don't know what to do. So they just kind of hover in sort of, thinking, not doing anything space for like a week or two. And so now, I plead with them, like, come to me early, come to your client early, and come to us with not just the problem, but with your initial thoughts about how we might go about addressing that problem, so that we can have that conversation quickly. And we can adjust. We can either adjust our goals, or we can adjust our methods for meeting those goals, or both, but we can still kind of make it work and still come up with something useful by the end of the semester and not just sort of throw up our hands. So that's the curveball part of it that I think I'd rather have them go through those sort of mini crises, in the safe space of class, rather than, as kind of early career folks beyond that. And then responding to criticism. So they'll turn in a rough draft of their deliverables with about 3 weeks to go in the semester. The clients then, I put comments on that, and the clients put comments on that. It is kind of a mid-range in terms of points assignment. And I grade it easier than I comment on it. So in other words, I'll put loads of things that I think they need to work on, but I won't penalize them really heavily for that, with a warning that if they don't address these by the final, then that's where they're going to feel the penalties more in terms of points. For the most part, though, they want to please the client. But I do get some that get sort of defensive about those criticisms. Frankly, the clients can often be a little bit more blunt than I am about some of the things that need to be changed. They don't do as much of the positive thing, criticism, positive thing sandwich for feedback, that kind of thing. But I think it's important for students to be able to get that kind of criticism and then do something with it, at least respond to it in some positive way. Maybe by saying we can't quite deliver what you're looking for, but not to take it personally. So we spend some time kind of working on that, on growth mindset types of stuff, and working on how to take even criticism that's not particularly constructive, how to take that criticism and work with it and turn it into something constructive and positive. So I kind of went through the goals and the assignments at the same time there. If we could go to the next slide, I've just got a quick sum up, and then I'll stop talking here. But yeah, so my kind of advice to kind of sum up, pull these both together is, one, figure out what your objectives are, or identify your objectives in the course, and then figure out how service learning can help you meet your objectives that you already have. Like, don't feel pressure to come up with whole new objectives. They should really be helping you achieve what you're already trying to achieve. So for that foundations course, there's also a lot of content in that course. So the service learning project is it's less than 20%. It's between 15 and 20%. The capstone course, the main goal of that course is, or the service learning project there, it really addresses the main objectives of that course, or most of the main objectives. So it's about 60% of the grade in that class, of the total grade in that class. And then finding a structure that works best for you. So again, the individual structure, I think, works best when you want to give students the room to find, to kind of find their own, attach their passion to that project. The small groups is what I use in Capstone, which gives them some latitude to make choices, but within the constraints of what I've set up. And then a colleague of mine actually uses a different structure where she has the entire class work with the same group, the same organization. So they're all kind of working on the same project, different parts of the same project. Other bit of advice, explain up front why you're doing this to the students, why you think this is important. You don't want them to feel like, this is just free work for somebody. So you want to point out what the experience you're hoping the students will have is. And then, with all of this, I try to frame it. I encourage the students to make these projects fun. It might not be, jet skiing in the Caribbean type of fun, but it should be something that's rewarding and interesting to them. And if they can't find a way to do that, I think that's kind of an inward journey they need to have about the courses they're taking and their major that they're in, because there's enough room in both of these things that they should be able to do that and try to pick out the parts of the project, or identify the skills that they want to get out of the project, and then mold the project in as much as they can to help them develop those skills as well. So I put some of the onus back on the student for that. And then I'll kick it back over to Haley. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. You brought up so many wonderful points. I think it's so important for us to explain why to students in everything we do, but especially for service learning, because some of them are already on board, but the ones that aren't, like, really getting into the, like, why have I chosen to use this method for this course is really help students make those connections between the learning and, like, what they're doing, right? So thank you. That was a great way of showing us how to use it within a major and thinking about, like, those steps that students take from, like, the beginning to the end. It also falls in line with when we talk about high impact practices, which service learning is a high impact practice of thinking about your first year experience in your capstone. These are all things that we're using when we're trying to retain students. We're trying to help them graduate. We're trying to help them feel that sense of belonging to the university. So be thinking about using service learning in those ways as well. So thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation.